Hello, my name is Tom, I'm 33, and last year I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, inattentive type. So the reason I started making this video is A, because one night I was sitting down trying to do some work and couldn't concentrate because I was narrating an imaginary YouTube video in my head of this, it's this. And also because I was looking on YouTube for people whose experiences were similar to mine in terms of age and school experience and employment experience and social bracket and that sort of thing, and actually not finding very much. So ADHD in children is very well covered as a general rule. And something else is that is getting a lot of focus at the moment is the misdiagnosis and underdiagnosis of attention deficit disorder in women and people who are AFAB, which is quite rightly so, because it's massively, much more so than people like myself, much more undiagnosed and misdiagnosed. But there's a fantastic wealth of information of people's experiences talking about that sort of thing. Lots of good science on it as well, lots of great guides on how to get diagnoses and live with your condition, so to speak. What there wasn't a lot of was anything sort of anecdotal. So the kind of just a person talking about their experiences and going off on tangents and recapping to previous points in their life, which, trust me, are relevant. And that's more the sort of thing I quite enjoy watching because it's a bit more engaging. Alright, that's one good example. There's a brilliant series called Soft White Underbelly, which I'll put a link to. There are a lot of very, often quite sad stories about people who've had difficult lives and have substance abuse disorders and that sort of thing. And this photographer does very sort of close-up interviews with them, and they're really interesting. But I remember seeing one in particular of a guy who was a functioning heroin addict. He was in a good mood, he was happy, he was polite, he was charming. But the way he was speaking about things reminded me of the way that I speak about things. Just the way I talk and recap and go on tangents. I was looking in the comments and a lot of people were saying there's almost certainly an attention deficit disorder or some sort of neurodivergence at play here. The chair is squeaking, it's infuriating. There we go. So I wanted to watch more videos like that because I like to make those connections with, somebody will say, I've got this habit where I do X, Y, Z, or I'm very prone to this and that, and I'll think, oh yes, that's a bit like me because I do that. So that's why I think I've taken about 10 minutes to tell you why I made this video, but there it is. Maybe there'll be like two versions of this, like a cut down ADHD friendly one and one that psychiatrists can watch and just nod. So I was swapping stories with a friend recently about somebody who was in a very similar position to me, got a diagnosis quite late in life. Like many people, after the coronavirus pandemic, were spending a lot of time alone in their house, essentially realised that something's up, I can't look after myself. And there's something's not right. Why is everything so difficult? Is everybody else trying as hard as me to do things, to keep house, to complete tasks, to keep yourself clean, to brush your teeth, to feed yourself, to do grocery shopping? I don't seem to be able to tackle any of it routinely. It's a struggle every day and every week to do everyday things. Not even anything specific like a project or anything, but just things like I said, feeding yourself, going to bed on time, getting to work on time, that sort of thing. So a little background then. I first started looking into a diagnosis when I was about, I think, 28. And it was the first time in my life where I was living on my own and looking after an entire house by myself and just not quite getting the hang of it. So I was diagnosed when I was 32. A little bit of background about myself then. At school as a child, I was a very quiet boy. People used to say, he's so quiet, you barely know he's there sometimes, he's in his own little world, all that sort of thing. As a child, I was very into books. I was very into a lot of the usual kids stuff, Lego, all that kind of thing, computer games, and then also would have some very intense fixations on particular books and particular hobbies that would last for quite a while and be very, very intense, and then be forgotten about. So I also had some odd habits, physical tics, which again would come and go in phases. So one of them was one where I would kind of keep excessively blinking because I felt like my eyelashes were stuck together. So I would be doing that all day. Very stupid. A little sort of throat clearing cough when my throat didn't need clearing, and a little kind of sniff to clear my nose, just all day, every few minutes, for no reason. And then I had a few other odd habits as well, which, you know, parents and people thought were hilarious. I'm often told a story about when I was at my grandmother's retirement party when she retired, and I was, I think, 3 or 4 years old. And it was a sort of, you know, mostly a very boring grown-up adults party, and I got a little bit bored, but my mum had brought a few things along to keep myself entertained, one of them being a puzzle. I did the puzzle very, very quickly and then did it upside down, face down, so it was just a plain brown board, which the entire party thought was hilarious. What an odd child, you know. So yeah, I had a lot of those sorts of traits, but I want to sort of get into school history. So at school, I was, as a general rule, considered very smart, a pleasure to have in class, but then also sometimes you barely knew I was there because I would just be so quiet. Now, being sat there and being so quiet isn't always a good thing, because what people didn't realise, teachers, parents, that sort of thing, is that I was not concentrating on anything. I was miles away. I would see other people working and thinking they were just pretending to concentrate. So is everybody else here not constantly wanting to talk to each other? And are they not thinking about other things? Are they not getting distracted by things that are going on outside? How are people just, you know, the teacher has said do this and now they're just doing it? I couldn't grasp that at all, unless it was something I was very, very interested in. So at school I really liked English and spelling, and art a little bit, not so much, wasn't very good at it. Music came a bit later. Absolutely loathed maths, science, anything really that wasn't English or history or anything slightly creative. There were a lot of common themes in all of my school reports at school, and they were, as I said, Tom is a pleasure to have in class. However, he doesn't really apply himself and doesn't seem to actually do very much work, even though he seems to be very smart. So my school books are filled with little bits of feedback like, this is not enough work, Tom. Why have you written only 2 lines? You had an hour to do this. Are you just going very slowly? Down to things like, I just don't understand why you have only written 2 words on the page. What happened? You were supposed to be doing this for an hour. A lot of things like that. Another word that was used a lot was coasting. I coasted a lot because I did the bare minimum of work, not because I was trying to not do too much work or trying to be lazy or trying to get out of doing work to do something else. It just didn't happen. I would have every intention of writing this, you know, 2-page story about an alien landing in my garden. But there were too many other things going on in here for me to be able to do that. I'd be walking over to the bookshelf to look up a word in a dictionary and then end up reading a chunk of the dictionary as if it was some sort of narrative. I would be daydreaming about other things. So if I wasn't doing something vaguely fun, like writing a story about an alien landing in my garden, and instead I'd been set some maths problems to do, no, I'd be thinking about what I would do when I got home and what order I was going to do them in, set up some sort of plan and get very enthusiastic about going home because I'm going to do this and this and this and this. Spoiler alert, that never happens, even now. And so yes, lots of daydreaming. Absolutely hopeless at teamwork. If I had to work in a team of other kids, forget it. I would be very good at pretending I was listening and looking involved and nodding, but felt physically paralysed from actually participating and contributing any ideas or actual work. And to be honest, that is something that does persist in my adult life too. And it's not even like they could get me to just do the writing. And, you know, okay, we'll do all the ideas. Who's got the nicest handwriting? You do it. Yeah, I don't have the nicest handwriting. It's terrible. Homework, again, physically could not bring myself to do it. Not such a problem in primary school. It was a bit of an optional thing. Secondary school got me into trouble a lot of times. I was doing my homework in the car on the way to school, or the night before in bed with a torch because I hadn't done it when I got home. Or sometimes I would be doing it at morning break time. Sometimes I wouldn't do it at all. And if I had a lesson first thing where I hadn't done the homework, I would get into trouble for that. But had a huge array of excuses, reasons, little white lies, ways of getting out of getting a detention or being punished in any way for it. I'd get to school and think, I haven't done my homework, I'm in trouble. But if I tell my history teacher, I'm sorry, I just haven't done the homework. If instead I tell him, I've lost my exercise book, I'm really sorry, that's less bad and I'll probably still get punished. But it buys me time. So then at break time, I can go and do my homework and then go back to him and say, I found my book, I'm really sorry, it was trapped inside another book, or it was in the other pocket of my bag, or it was in my lunchbox, I don't know, yeah. So, you know, I now know this to be sort of very much a trait of attention deficit disorders, and it's just not being able to do things till the last minute and getting very stressed about it and then absolutely knocking it out of the park right at the last minute, sometimes when it's too late, sometimes just in time, but then just about managing to pull things back, which sounds like a great skill, and that's not supposed to be some sort of brag, it's not at all, because what that means is you end up being extra stressed, and if you're doing that every day for many different things, housework, you know, doing things for your partner or your parents, work, anything really, and you're just making excuses and putting things off and hoping to just swing it round last minute, you burn out very easily. So that started at school. Studying as well, or revision, I thought that was made up. You know, in the lead up to exams, people would be saying, have you done revision? Have you done revision? No, I haven't. What is revision? What am I going to do? Read back through the things that I've written before and then refresh my memory on them? No, doesn't work. Doesn't take. Either my notes would be total nonsense, or I would already know this stuff. And even if I did, when it comes to the day, might not be able to recall it. Waste of time. I thought everyone else was pretending. So then starting secondary school, which depending on where you're viewing from, in the UK you start secondary school at age 11 and you leave when you're 16 or 18 if you do further education. So starting secondary school at 11, things were broadly the same. Again, well liked by teachers, not particularly hard-working, especially in things I didn't like. Also, when I say well liked by teachers, that is teachers of English, art, humanities, you know, history, geography, all fine. Science teachers, maths teachers, we didn't really see eye to eye. Also, it's very hard to see eye to eye when you're late for almost every lesson of your school life. So things that started to suffer a lot more as I got older, which are traits: punctuality, getting enough sleep, going to sleep on time and waking up at the right time. I hated going to bed, absolutely hated going to bed. I felt like there's so many things that I want to do every day and I haven't done enough of them, and I feel like if I just have to walk away from them and I have to go to sleep, I'm just going to be thinking about them and not be able to stop thinking about them. You know, oh no, I was doing a painting, I was finishing a level on Quake, or I really wanted to watch the end of this episode of a TV show I probably wasn't old enough to be watching. Inspector Morse and the X-Files, really into them. Or finishing a book, reading a book. I used to read so many books a week, quite often 3 or 4 at a time. They were ones that I'd chosen myself, not school books or anything, so it was stuff I was interested in and liked and would get obsessed with. I was obsessed with Jurassic Park, book called Heaven Eyes by David Almond, the Whitby trilogy by Robin Jarvis, which is basically Lovecraft for kids. Loved it. So I'd be up very late reading, sometimes being in the bathroom pretending to brush my teeth and be washing, when actually I'm sat on the bath mat reading a book, and then not brushing my teeth. We'll come back to that. So schoolwork started to dip a bit because, you know, as you get older, you'd have to put more effort in. There's more work quantitatively, and it's harder. So all the stuff that I wasn't particularly good at, science and maths, anything in that sort of region, useless. Couldn't apply myself, just couldn't figure out how to apply myself to it. And it was just viewed as, he's just lazy, he's not applying himself for whatever reason. He's not an idiot, but for some reason his work is just terrible. He just shows no understanding because he's not paying attention. And it's like, yeah, I'm not paying attention in hindsight, of course. So that got worse. And then obviously as you get a bit older then, so, I should mention, recapitulation. Wind back a bit. When I was in year 4, when I was 8 years old, I thought I knew everything. I didn't think there was anything that my teacher could teach me, especially as she used to make countless spelling mistakes and grammatical errors, and also I'd found a new hyperfixation. Birds. Absolutely obsessed with birds, reading about birds, learning their names, their Latin names, learning about dimorphism, migration patterns. So I would sit for this entire school year, not pay attention to any lessons, and I would just read bird books, cover to cover, over and over, and not do any work. And for some reason, I was allowed to get away with this. I guess because I wasn't bothering anybody. So there was one other boy in my class who had ADHD, but he had the hyperactive version, which I did not. So he was doing all the usual things, bouncing around the room, not staying in his seat, disrupting other people, constantly, you know, which I now know to be, my brain is so depleted of stimulus that I need to find it somewhere because it's not coming from this damn lesson. So he got all the attention. You know, he had a teaching assistant and he had extra help with work, a separate desk, all that kind of thing. For some reason, I was just allowed to sit down and read my bird books and not do maths. Oh yeah, so I had another one again when I was 14, so that's year 10. Did not apply myself at all. Year 9 I've done okay. You do some exams at the end of year 9 and then you can drop a few subjects for year 10, for your GCSEs, and just choose the ones that you like doing within reason. You know, you still have to pick certain types, you have to do PE, and you have to do one of the technologies and that sort of thing. And I chose English, history, German. No, I didn't choose any languages. Yes, I did. I chose French. Did GCSE French? Got a B. Got a B. Rather than discovering a new hyperfixation in birds, I, did the usual teenage stuff of discovering birds. But that's girls. That's very UK slang. And also smoking and drinking. Brilliant. This is great. Yeah, so vaguely suspicious narcotics, I suppose, shall we say, and whatever is in mum and dad's drinks cabinet. Brilliant. And at the end of year 10, my teachers, basically all of them, even in my good subjects, were saying, you're going to fail your GCSEs. So that was almost like another, I don't know, I call it a fallow year, where I just think, you know what, I've checked out, I'm not learning anything, I'm choosing not to learn anything. So that sort of set the groundwork then for, year 11, I did quite well in my GCSEs. I got almost, except for English, which I got an A, and French, which I got a B in. I got a C in everything, and it was just fine. I had done fine. So that sort of brings me to the end of my school year up until I get to sort of 16. And then I think the next video in this series, depending on how I decide to segment them, I haven't got that far ahead yet. Put very little thought into this. So in the next part, I think I'll pick it up from here and go from where I got to age 16 into kind of early 20s. And then my experiences there and anything that in hindsight I realised might have been signs, something I could have done, ways that they've really kind of tripped me up and affected my life in a negative way or a positive way. Thank you for joining me. Like and subscribe if you like. I have no idea if this series has any legs because there will be a new fad next week. So perhaps every now and again I will just get the camera out and sit here and talk to myself in my room. Thank you.